You walk out to check on your pepper plants and your stomach drops. Those beautiful green leaves from last week, yellow, wilting. Some are already on the ground. You water them, you feed them, you do everything right, but they're still dying right in front of you. And the worst part? You have no idea why. Today, that changes. I'm going to walk you through exactly what's killing your peppers, and more importantly, how to bring them back before it's too late. Stay with me, because at the end, I'm sharing a recovery method that saved plants I was absolutely certain were dead. Let's dive in. Catching a struggling pepper early is the difference between a harvest that feeds your family and a dead plant in the compost. These plants are constantly telling you what's wrong. We just need to learn their language. If you're serious about keeping your peppers alive, hit that subscribe button right now. I drop a new video every week with strategies that actually work. All right, let's talk about reading what your plant is screaming at you. Pepper plants don't just randomly die. They communicate constantly through their leaves, their stems, the way they hold themselves up, even the flowers. Yellow leaves tell a completely different story depending on where they show up. Bottom of the plant? That's one thing. Top of the plant? Totally different problem. Wilting at 8 in the morning versus wilting at 3 in the afternoon? Two different diagnoses. Here's what you need to do. Start at the base of your plant and work your way up. Those older leaves at the bottom, they're your early warning system for nutrient problems. When you see them turning yellow while everything up top stays green, your plant is pulling nutrients from the old growth to feed the new stuff. That's nitrogen moving through the plant because it can. But calcium, iron, those don't move once the plant puts them somewhere. So when you see problems in the newest growth, those are your calcium and iron deficiencies showing up. Now wilting, that's where most people get confused. A plant that wilts in the afternoon heat but bounces back by evening? Completely normal. That plant is just managing a hot day like we all do. But a plant that's still wilted the next morning when it's cool? That's your emergency alarm going off. Something underground is seriously wrong. Either the roots are drowning, they're damaged, or something is blocking the water from getting where it needs to go. Look at your stems, too. A healthy pepper stem on new growth should be firm and green, gradually turning woody toward the base as it matures. But if you're seeing dark brown or black creeping up from where the stem meets the soil, that's rot. And if the stem looks pinched or constricted right at the base, you're dealing with damping off or a fungal infection. Any white fuzzy stuff anywhere on the stem needs immediate. And don't ignore the flowers. Flowers that drop before they even open usually mean temperature stress or your watering schedule is all over the place. Flowers that open but never give you peppers, that's either a pollination issue or it's just too hot. Small peppers that turn brown and fall off, that's blossom end rot. And here's the kicker, it's not actually a disease, it's a watering problem. Let me tell you something that took me way too long to figure out. Watering kills more pepper plants than every pest and disease combined. And the really frustrating part? Overwatering and underwatering look almost identical above ground. Both make your plant wilt, both turn leaves yellow, both stress the plant so much it drops flowers and aborts fruit. The only way to know the difference is to stick your finger in the soil about 2 inches down. Soggy? You're overwatering. Bone dry more than a day after you watered? You're either underwatering or your soil isn't holding moisture like it should. When you overwater peppers, the roots literally suffocate in that waterlogged soil. They can't breathe, they lose their ability to pull up nutrients, and they start dying back. Above ground, you're seeing wilt even though the soil is wet. Yellow leaves. Sometimes you'll even see these little blisters or bumps on the undersides of leaves. That's edema, where the plant has absorbed more water than it can get rid of. And if root rot has really set in, you'll smell something sour near the soil line. The fix is going to take some courage. You have to stop watering completely until that soil dries out significantly. If your plant is in a container, check those drainage holes. Blocked drainage is the #1 killer of container peppers. If you're growing in the ground and your soil stays wet for days, you've got a drainage problem that mulch alone won't solve. You might need to think about raised beds or mixing in some coarse material like perlite for your next planting. Underwatered peppers wilt hard during the day, and depending on how bad the drought stress is, they may or may not recover by evening. The leaves feel papery, thin, almost crispy. The soil pulls away from the sides of the container, or you see cracks forming in ground plantings. And blossom end rot almost always follows drought stress because calcium can't move through the plant without water. Even if your soil has plenty of calcium, without consistent moisture, it's useless. What you're aiming for is consistent moisture, not soaking wet, not bone dry. Evenly moist, like a sponge you've wrung out. Drip irrigation on a timer takes all the guesswork out of this, and mulching your soil with 2 to 3 inches of straw or wood chips or shredded leaves, that stabilizes the moisture between waterings, and you won't have to water nearly as often. During peak summer, container peppers might need water every single day. Ground plantings with good mulch might go 3 or 4 days. Check the soil instead of watering on some arbitrary schedule that ignores what's actually happening down there. Yellow leaves send people into a panic, and the first thing they do is dump fertilizer on the problem. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes it makes everything catastrophically worse. Reading the pattern of the yellowing tells you exactly what your plant needs and what it absolutely does not need more of. Nitrogen deficiency starts at the bottom. Those older leaves turn pale green, then yellow, then they just drop. The whole plant looks exhausted and growth slows to a crawl. A balanced fertilizer or a side dressing of compost fixes this in a couple of weeks. Blood meal works fast if you need nitrogen quickly, but go easy. A tablespoon or 2 worked into the top inch of soil is plenty for one plant. Iron deficiency looks completely different. The newest leaves at the top turn yellow, but the veins stay bright green. It creates this really striking pattern called interveinal chlorosis. And here's what most people don't realize. Iron deficiency almost never means your soil doesn't have iron. What it usually means is your soil pH has climbed too high and locked that iron into a form your plant can't use. A soil test will confirm this. If your pH is above 7, sulfur amendments will gradually bring it back down into that 6 to 6.8 range where peppers thrive and iron becomes available again. Magnesium deficiency creates yellow patches between the veins on older and middle leaves while the veins stay green. Epsom salt dissolved in water, about a teaspoon per gallon applied to the soil, gives you a quick magnesium boost. And if you spray that same solution directly onto the leaves, you get even faster results because the plant absorbs magnesium straight through the leaf surface. But too much fertilizer creates its own nightmare. Nitrogen toxicity gives you these dark green leaves that almost look bluish. Excessive leaf growth everywhere and barely any flowers or fruit. The plant is putting everything into leaves instead of making peppers. The only fix is time. Stop fertilizing completely and let the plant work through that excess nitrogen. Heavy watering can help flush some of it below the root zone, but mostly you just have to wait and remember to go lighter next season. Salt buildup from synthetic fertilizers shows up as brown, crispy edges on leaves that look like burn damage. Flushing the soil with plain water several times helps wash those excess salts through. Switch to organic fertilizers for the rest of the season to prevent it from building up again. Pepper plants attract their fair share of pests, and there are diseases that specifically target them. Catching these early is the difference between minor damage and losing your entire crop. Aphids cluster on new growth and the undersides of leaves. Small infestations cause curled, twisted new leaves. Large infestations weaken the entire plant, and they spread viral diseases as they jump from plant to plant. A strong spray of water knocks most aphids off. Insecticidal soap handles heavier infestations. If you can attract or purchase ladybugs and lacewings for your garden, they'll devour aphids by the hundreds. Spider mites thrive in hot, dry conditions. The first sign is usually this stippled, bronzed look on the leaves. Look closely and you might see tiny webbing on the undersides. Increasing humidity around your plants discourages mites. Neem oil suffocates the ones that are already there. These mites reproduce explosively in dry heat, so catching them early matters enormously. Hornworms can strip an entire pepper plant overnight. These massive green caterpillars blend in perfectly, even though they're as big as your finger. Hand-picking is still the most effective control. Check your plants early in the morning when hornworms are active and easier to spot. Bacterial leaf spot creates dark, water-soaked spots on leaves that eventually turn brown and papery. Pull off infected leaves and destroy them. Don't compost them. Copper fungicide slows the spread, but it can't cure tissue that's already infected. Avoiding overhead watering reduces bacterial spread significantly. Phytophthora blight starts as dark lesions on stems near the soil line and spreads rapidly in wet conditions. Infected plants often just collapse suddenly. There's no cure once the infection sets in. Remove and destroy affected plants immediately. Improve your drainage, rotate your crops, and don't plant peppers in that spot for at least 3 years. Peppers love heat, but extreme conditions push them past their limits. Understanding where those limits are helps you protect your plants before damage happens. Temperatures above 90 degrees for extended periods cause blossom drop. The plant sees extreme heat as a survival threat and abandons reproduction to focus on staying alive. Flowers fall off before they open. Small fruit might abort. The plant is just hunkering down, waiting for better conditions. Shade cloth rated at 30 to 50% blocks enough sunlight to drop the temperature by 10 to 15 degrees underneath. Position that shade cloth on the west side of your plants to protect them during the hottest afternoon hours. Cold damage shows up differently. Peppers stop growing below 55 degrees and suffer cellular damage below 50. Leaves exposed to cold develop dark, water-soaked patches that eventually turn brown and papery. Fruit touched by cold becomes pitted and discolored. If an unexpected cold snap is coming, cover your plants with row cover or even old bed sheets overnight. That provides several degrees of protection. Container peppers can just be moved to a protected spot like a garage or covered porch until temperatures recover. Wind damage tears leaves, breaks branches, and dramatically increases water loss. A pepper plant in a windy, exposed location needs way more water and may still struggle. Windbreaks, whether it's fencing or other plants or temporary barriers, reduce wind stress significantly. Stake your peppers in windy areas to prevent branches from breaking when they get heavy with fruit. Sun scald affects fruit more than leaves. Peppers suddenly exposed to intense direct sun develop pale, papery patches that eventually rot. This often happens when you prune too many leaves at once or when disease or pests defoliate the plant. Leave enough foliage to shade developing fruit. If your plant has lost leaves to other problems, shade cloth or strategic positioning protects exposed fruit until new leaves grow back. All right, let's talk about immediate actions you can take today that'll start turning this around. Check your soil moisture right now. Stick your finger 2 inches down. If it's soggy, stop watering. If it's bone dry, give it a deep soak. This single check prevents about 70% of pepper problems. Add 2 to 3 inches of mulch around your plants if you haven't already. This takes about 10 minutes per plant and stabilizes moisture, moderates soil temperature, and reduces how often you need to water. Inspect the undersides of leaves for pests. Most people never look there. Spider mites, aphids, whiteflies, they all hide on the undersides. Catching them early means a quick spray with water or soap instead of losing the plant. Remove any leaves touching the soil. This prevents soil-borne diseases from splashing up onto the plant during watering. Takes 30 seconds per plant. If you only do one thing, dial in your watering. More pepper plants die from watering issues than everything else combined. Get this right and you solve most of your problems before they start. Let me give you the quick reference guide. Screenshot this if it helps. If you see yellowing from the bottom up with slow growth, that's nitrogen deficiency. Fix it with balanced fertilizer or compost. If you see yellowing between veins on lower leaves while veins stay green, that's magnesium shortage. Fix it with Epsom salt, 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. If you see new leaves turning yellow with green veins, that's iron lockout from high pH. Fix it with sulfur amendments to lower pH. If you see wilting despite wet soil, that's root rot from overwatering. Stop watering and check drainage immediately. If you see flowers dropping, that's temperature stress above 90 or below 55 or inconsistent watering. Fix it with shade cloth and consistent moisture. If you see leaves with holes, stippling, or webbing, that's pest activity. Identify the pest and treat with water spray, soap, neem oil, or hand removal. The golden rule: consistent conditions beat perfect conditions every time. Peppers can handle less than ideal if it stays consistent. It's the wild swings that kill them. Now, I may share something that sounds almost too simple, but I've used this to bring back plants that everyone else would have thrown in the compost bin. I call it the deep rescue soak, and it works when nothing else will. Here's how it works. Fill a bucket or basin with room temperature water. If your plant is in a container, submerge the entire pot up to the rim. Let it sit for 30 minutes. The soil rehydrates completely from the bottom up, re-wetting those hydrophobic dry patches that surface watering completely misses. After 30 minutes, lift the pot out, let it drain thoroughly, and put the plant in bright, indirect light for a few days instead of full sun. That reduced light intensity lets the plant focus on. I've watched completely limp peppers stand back up within 6 hours using this method. But here's the catch. It doesn't work if root rot has already set in. Check for that sour smell and mushy roots first. For drought-stressed plants that have simply dried out too far, though, this brings them back when surface watering won't touch them. When to use it? When a plant is severely wilted from drought and regular watering hasn't helped within 24 hours. When not to use it, if the soil is already wet or if you suspect root rot. The first time you see a wilted plant stand back up in a few hours, you'll understand why I swear by this. A pepper plant that looks nearly dead can still recover if the roots and main stem are viable. Strip away any completely dead material. Brown crispy leaves, shriveled branches, rotted stems, all of it goes. What's left tells you what's possible. A plant with green wood in the main stem and any living root still has a chance. Cut back to live tissue, even if that means removing 80% of the plant. New growth emerges from nodes on the remaining stem once conditions improve. If you're dealing with a struggling container plant, repotting into fresh soil gives the roots a clean start. Gently remove the plant, shake off the old soil, trim any brown or mushy roots back to healthy white tissue, and replant in fresh, well-draining mix. Water once to settle the soil, then hold off until the top inch dries out. The temptation to overwater a recovering plant is strong. Resist it. Foliar feeding helps struggling plants that can't uptake nutrients through damaged roots. Dilute liquid fertilizer to half strength and spray it directly onto the leaves in early morning or evening when the stomata are open. The plant absorbs nutrients directly, bypassing the compromised roots temporarily while they recover. Stress recovery takes time. A plant that nearly died won't bounce back in a week. 4 to 6 weeks of consistent, proper care usually reveals whether recovery is happening. New growth emerging from the stem is the clearest sign. If nothing emerges after 6 weeks of good conditions, the plant is gone and your energy is better spent on the next one. And that's okay. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, a plant doesn't make it. Learn from it and move forward. Let's bring this home. You started this video watching your peppers struggle and not knowing why. Now you know how to read what they're telling you through their leaves, their stems, their overall behavior. You know the difference between overwatering and underwatering, even though they look the same above ground. You know how to diagnose nutrient deficiencies based on where the yellowing shows up. You've got the immediate actions you can take today. You've got the deep rescue soak technique that brings plants back from the edge. This isn't guesswork anymore. This is a system. You're not just following random advice. You're diagnosing and fixing the actual problem. Before you go, if you found this valuable, make sure you're subscribed to SproutCycle Garden. I'm dropping videos every week on exactly this kind of practical, real-world gardening advice. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss the next one. And here's what I want to know. What's the biggest struggle you're having with your peppers right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll give you specific advice for your situation. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring enough about your garden to actually learn this stuff the right way instead of just guessing. Now get out there and save those peppers. You've got the knowledge,